Chapter 1. A People Formed. It is the promises of God that make the church, and not the church that makes the promises of God. Martin Luther. Pastor Barry pulls into his driveway at exactly 12:21 early Sunday afternoon, wondering, how is it that I always arrive home from church at the exact same time every single week? His day thus far has occurred with the same clockwork precision as all his other Sundays. He rose early to look over his sermon notes, kissed his kids goodbye shortly after they woke, hustled off to church for his morning routine, a brief sound check, a walk around the facility, a time of customary prayer with a few men in the church before leading his pastor's class. And though he prayed with several more friends immediately before the worship service, he'd be embarrassed to admit he didn't really expect anything special to happen that morning. Just preaching his usual sermon to the usual people, same as last week, same as every week, people who seem unmoved, a church that appears to be barren. After the worship services, he stood in the back and shook the hands of people he loves and others he tolerates, receiving the same type of casual compliments he hears every week, along with the same few hugs and the same few suggestions, the same, always the same. Even sitting here in his driveway like this, staring at these same green numbers on the same dashboard clock, having plodded his way again through the same routine, everything's playing out the same as every other Sunday. Everything except this. He would usually be out of the car and inside by now, if the pattern held true. But today, something's different. The passage he'd just preached this morning is still resonating in his heart, lingering more powerfully than usual. Matthew 16, about Jesus' promise to build his church, punctuated by the phrase, "The gates of Hades will not overcome it." Verse 18. That line, that thought, still messing with his mind. When Jesus spoke of his church withstanding the gates of Hades, surely this is not what he envisioned, a church without life. Barry thinks back to his first encounters with Matthew 16 as a young pastor, back when he was convinced that the churches he'd be called to lead throughout his ministry would become unstoppable movements of grace, threatening the very gates of Hades. But today his youthful belief seems replaced by a sinking feeling in his gut, enough that he's started to seriously consider doing something else with his life. Not because his love for Jesus has waned, but just because this is not what he envisioned when he committed to pastoring. He longs for life, and this just feels dead. Like he's no longer alive, inspiring little passion for God among the people in his church, little hunger to worship, little compassion for those in the community. Just a continual cycle of the same lifeless motions. Why? Several hours later, across town in a newer neighborhood, Pastor Chase pulls into his driveway. He's been running on adrenaline all day. Huge crowd at church this morning, a big response to the new teaching series his staff has been planning for weeks, one with an edgy title, a tightly produced sermon bumper video, and a crisp assortment of mass marketing packages. It's been a full, bustling day already. Yet, he feels empty inside. Because if next week is anything like past history, the attendance for Part 2 of his splashy new teaching series will be way down, and the staff will immediately want to start strategizing for another big launch, probably on sex. He wonders if his church will set the record for the number of sex series in 1 year. Why does it take that, he wonders? Why does everything have to be so forced, so fabricated, built on hype instead of substance? Why this emptiness inside after all the energy they generated in the past few hours? As he sits in his driveway looking down at his cell phone, friends from his networks are already texting to see how the big day went. He knows what they're wanting to hear. Success in ministry still seems defined by Sunday attendance.